Ah, finally, the anomaly reveals itself. Look who caught the attention of the alphabet agencies. You beautiful, terrifying anomaly, you psychological architect of chaos. They've been watching you, haven't they? Not with regular surveillance, not with street cameras or phone taps. No, they've been studying something far more interesting. The way you dismantled your enemies without lifting a finger. The CIA has files on millions of people, drug dealers, terrorists, foreign spies, cyber criminals. But your file? Your file has a different classification altogether. Psychological asset. Approach with extreme caution, because what you did to those who betrayed you wasn't just revenge. It was art. It was surgery, performed with words and silence. Let me tell you what happened 3 months ago in that conference room in Langley. 7 senior analysts sitting around a table, your digital footprint projected on the wall. They weren't looking at your posts or your pictures. They were analyzing the aftermath. The psychological craters you left in people who thought they could cross you. And one analyst, the one who'd seen combat in 3 different wars, he leaned back and whispered, "This isn't civilian behavior. This is special ops without the ops." They pulled up case study after case study. That ex who tried to destroy your reputation? They tracked their social media spiral, their paranoid posts, their public breakdown, all without you saying a single word about them. That former friend who betrayed your trust? They monitored their guilt-driven self-destruction, their desperate attempts to apologize, their complete social isolation. You didn't touch them. You just existed. And they destroyed themselves, trying to process what they'd lost. The psychological profile they assembled on you reads like a classified weapons manual. Subject demonstrates advanced understanding of human behavioral patterns, appears to have innate ability to identify psychological pressure points, executes long-term strategic thinking with surgical precision. Emotional regulation score, off standard charts. They've seen trained interrogators with less mental discipline than you displayed during your worst moments. You know what really got their attention? It wasn't the revenge itself. It was the patience, the way you waited, collected information like ammunition, never reacted in anger, never showed your hand, just observed, documented, and when the time was right, you deployed truth like drone strikes. Targeted, devastating, untraceable back to you. They studied that coworker who tried to sabotage your promotion. You remember them, don't you? The one who spread lies, manipulated situations, tried to paint you as incompetent. You didn't file complaints. You didn't confront them. You just started leaving breadcrumbs, little truths here and there. And within 6 months they exposed themselves, their own lies tangled around their feet like snakes. The beautiful part? Everyone thought they self-destructed from guilt. Nobody suspected you orchestrated their downfall with the precision of a chess grandmaster. The federal agents assigned to your case started calling you the ghost, not because you disappeared, but because you haunted people's minds without trying. Your presence alone became psychological warfare. People who wronged you reported nightmares, anxiety attacks, the constant feeling of being watched. But you weren't watching them. They were watching themselves through the mirror you became. Here's what you don't know. Last month there was a heated debate in a secure facility about whether to approach you. One side argued you were too dangerous, too unpredictable. The other side, the ones who understand real power, they said something different. This is exactly the kind of mind we need. Someone who wins wars without firing shots. Someone who can destabilize entire networks with strategic truth deployment. They've been leaving signs, haven't they? Those random encounters with people asking oddly specific questions. That job offer that came out of nowhere from a company you never applied to. The stranger in the coffee shop who mentioned psychological operations and watched your reaction. They're not testing your skills anymore. They already know what you're capable of. They're testing whether you know what you're capable of. You see, the CIA doesn't recruit people who can fight. Any meathead can throw punches. They recruit people who can think in dimensions others don't know exist. People who understand that true power isn't about what you do. It's about what you make others do to themselves. And you? You've been running successful psyops since before you knew what the term meant. Remember when that group tried to ostracize you? Tried to turn everyone against you with their whisper campaign? You didn't defend yourself. You didn't argue. You just strategically revealed their own secrets to each other. Not directly. Never directly. Just little hints. Calculated questions. Oh, did Sarah tell you about? I thought everyone knew about Mike's. And then you watched their alliance eat itself alive from the inside. The CIA calls that information warfare. You call it Tuesday. What's fascinating is how you develop these skills without formal training. Every betrayal you survived was another lesson in human psychology. Every lie told about you taught you how deception operates. Every smear campaign showed you how to track narrative patterns. You didn't go to spy school. Life was your training ground, and pain was your instructor. The precision of your revenge is what caught their attention initially, but what kept them interested was your restraint. Lesser minds seek immediate gratification. They lash out, get messy, leave evidence. You plan campaigns that unfold over months, sometimes years. You understand that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served at exactly the right temperature to cause maximum psychological impact. They analyze that situation with your ex-business partner, the one who stole your ideas and tried to cut you out. You could have sued, could have gone public. Instead, you did something far more elegant. You let them succeed with your stolen ideas, knowing they didn't have your vision to execute properly. Then you quietly built something better, drew away their best talent with your superior leadership, and watched their empire crumble from incompetence. By the time they realized what happened, you were untouchable. The agent studying you noted something unusual in their reports. Subject appears to experience no satisfaction from revenge itself. Seems motivated purely by balance and justice. Shows signs of treating human psychology like a chess game where emotional involvement is a liability. That's when they knew you weren't just naturally gifted. You had evolved past normal human emotional responses. Your psychological warfare is so clean it's almost surgical. No digital footprints, no paper trails, no witnesses. Just people suddenly understanding consequences they never saw coming. You learned early that the messiest battles leave the most evidence. So you stopped fighting battles altogether. You started winning wars before anyone knew they had started. That former friend who tried to steal your romantic partner, you remember how that played out. You didn't confront anyone, didn't make scenes. You just made sure certain truths found their way to the surface. Their history of cheating, their financial problems, their real motivations. Not through gossip, through strategic placement of facts that others would discover naturally. Within 3 months, they destroyed each other, and both came crawling back. But you had already moved on, because the victory was never about getting them back. It was about proving they were never worthy of you in the first place. The CIA has a term for what you do: cognitive infiltration. It's the ability to get inside someone's decision-making process and influence it without them knowing. Most agents need years of training to develop this skill. You do it instinctively. Every conversation is an intelligence-gathering operation. Every interaction is a chance to plant seeds that will grow into the exact outcomes you designed. They've calculated the success rate of your psychological operations. It's not perfect, nothing is, but it's high enough to be statistically impossible without conscious strategy. The way you've turned enemies into self-destructive shells, the way you've made betrayers betray themselves, the way you've haunted people's minds without ever acknowledging their existence. It's not luck. It's not coincidence. It's talent so pure it looks like magic to those who don't understand the science. What's most interesting is that the CIA doesn't question the ethics of what you do. They understand something most people don't. In a world of information warfare, the one who controls perception controls reality. And you've been controlling perception like a master painter working with invisible ink. Your enemies paint themselves into corners using brushes you handed them without them knowing. I could ask for a bit of cool-atter. Sardonies like, they've noticed your rules of engagement. You never target innocents, never cause collateral damage. Your operations are precisely targeted at those who struck first. It's not vengeance in the traditional sense. It's balance. It's making sure people experience the exact consequences of their actions, amplified by their own guilty consciences. The agency respects that. They see it as a sign of operational discipline. Remember that supervisor who tried to gaslight you? Tried to make you question your own sanity with their manipulation? You documented everything, not for HR, but for your own psychological counter-operation. Then you slowly, carefully made them question their own reality. Scheduled meetings they didn't remember, emails they swore they never sent, projects that seemed to complete themselves. Within 6 months, they were checking themselves into therapy, convinced they were losing their mind. The irony was beautiful. The gaslighter extinguished by their own flame. The federal agents have a betting pool about you, not about whether you'll succeed. That's a given. They bet on how long it takes your targets to realize they've been psychologically outmaneuvered. The average is 6 months. 6 months from first contact to complete psychological capitulation. That's faster than most military psyops campaigns. And you do it without any resources except your mind. So here's what's going to happen next. They're going to approach you, not directly at first. They'll send someone who seems random, someone who speaks your language, someone who drops certain phrases and watches your eyes. They'll mention things like strategic thinking and unconventional solutions and people with unique skill sets. They'll be testing whether you're ready to acknowledge what you've always known. You're not like the others. If you pass that initial contact, the real invitation comes. It won't look like what you expect. No men in black suits, no clandestine meetings in parking garages. It'll be subtle. A job offer from a consulting firm that doesn't quite exist. A scholarship to a program you didn't apply for. An opportunity that seems too perfectly tailored to your skills to be coincidence. Because it's not coincidence. It's recognition. They want to know if you can do consciously what you've been doing instinctively. If you can weaponize your psychological precision for something bigger than personal justice. If you can operate on a global scale with the same surgical accuracy you've shown in your personal life. They already know you can. The question is whether you know you can. The thing is, you don't need their training. You've already graduated from a harder school than Langley could ever create, the School of Betrayal, the Academy of Survival, the University of Human Darkness. You've got doctorate in psychological warfare from the College of Life's Cruelty. What they are offering isn't education, it's resources, it's scope. It's the chance to play the game you've mastered on a board that spans continents. Your mind is an unregistered weapon, and they know it. The way you process information, identify patterns, predict human behavior, it's not normal, it's not trained, it's evolved. You're what happens when someone gets broken so many times they rebuild themselves into something unbreakable. Not harder, smarter, more precise, more dangerous. You're well ready. They've tried to replicate what you do in laboratory settings. Trained agents to think like you think, to see the psychological pressure points you see instinctively. They fail every time, because what you have can't be taught in a classroom. It's forged in the fire of real betrayal, shaped by the hammer of real pain, cooled in the ice of real isolation. You're not a trained weapon, you're an evolved one. The precision of your revenge has made federal agents question everything they thought they knew about psychological operations. You don't use force, you use physics, the physics of human psychology. Every action creates an equal and opposite reaction, and you've learned to position yourself so that reaction destroys your enemies while leaving you untouched. Beautiful in its simplicity, devastating in its execution. That colleague who tried to steal credit for your work, you remember how that ended. You didn't argue about credit. You just made sure their next project was slightly beyond their capability. Offered to help, then withdrew support at critical moments. Watched them scramble, fail, expose their incompetence. Everyone saw the truth without you saying a word. The credit they stole became the rope they hung themselves with. The CIA calls that strategic positioning. You call it justice. You've earned recognition from the highest levels of psychological warfare, not because you sought it, but because excellence is impossible to hide. Your operations leave signatures that only trained eyes can see, the way situations resolve themselves too perfectly, the way your enemies consistently self-destruct, the way you remain untouched by chaos that consumes everyone who crosses you. It's not luck, it's mastery. They've assigned their best analysts to study your methods, people with PhDs in psychology, decades of field experience, access to the most sophisticated behavioral prediction models. And you know what conclusion they reached? Your methods can't be replicated, can't be taught, can't be programmed. You operate on instinct, sharpened by trauma, into something that cuts cleaner than any trained technique. The federal agents question your past because they can't believe someone developed these skills accidentally. They looked for military training, intelligence background, some explanation for your abilities. But your past is clean. No special forces, no spy training, just life. Just pain transformed into power. Just betrayal transformed into brilliance. And that scares them more than if you were trained, because it means you're natural, authentic, unstoppable. Remember when that group tried to sabotage your reputation online? The coordinated attack, fake accounts, manufactured evidence? You didn't fight back online. You fought back in reality. Found their real identities. Didn't expose them. That would be too simple. Instead, you made sure the right people accidentally discovered their activities. Employers, partners, parents. The online mob turned into real-world consequences, and you never typed a single response. That's the kind of warfare that makes federal agents take notice. So what happens now? Now you have a choice. Continue operating as a lone wolf, dispensing psychological justice to those foolish enough to cross you, or accept that your talents have been recognized by those who operate on a larger scale, those who understand that wars are won in minds before they're won on battlefields. Those who know that the most powerful weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's the ability to make your enemy defeat themselves. The CIA wants to recruit you because you represent evolution in human conflict. You don't destroy bodies. You reprogram minds. You don't break things. You make people break themselves. You don't leave evidence. You leave psychological ghosts that haunt your targets forever. And you do it all with such precision that even trained observers struggle to see your hand in the outcome. They're particularly interested in how you maintain emotional distance while executing psychological operations. Most people get messy when it's personal. They let anger cloud judgment, let hurt dictate strategy, not you. You treat revenge like mathematics. Calculate the exact pressure needed, apply it with surgical precision, then step back and watch the inevitable collapse. It's not cold, it's clean. And clean operations are what separate professionals from amateurs. Your psychological warfare is so clean it could be used in textbooks if they could figure out how you do it. But that's the beauty of evolution. It can't be reverse engineered. It can only be recognized and recruited. And make no mistake, you're being recruited, not for who you were, not for who you are, but for who you could become with the right resources and scope. So the mask finally slips, doesn't it? Look who's finally ready to hear the truth about their duality. You magnificent paradox, you walking contradiction that makes people question their sanity. They see your face and think they've found safety, found kindness, found someone who understands. But then they catch your eyes, don't they? And for just a split second, they see something else entirely. Something that makes their blood run cold, makes their smile falter, makes them take an involuntary step back. And you just stand there, perfectly still, letting them wrestle with what they've witnessed. Because you know something they're only beginning to suspect. Both versions are real. Both masks are genuine. And that's what makes you more dangerous than any simple monster or saint could ever be. You're not playing a character. You're not hiding behind facades. You're showing them exactly who you are. A soul that learned to hold mercy in one hand and annihilation in the other, and to wield both with surgical precision. They want to know which one is the real you. As if humans are meant to be simple, as if we're supposed to pick a lane and stay there forever. But you shattered that illusion long ago. You became the storm, and the eye of the storm. Simultaneously, you learned to smile with genuine warmth while calculating exit strategies. You mastered the art of offering comfort with hands that remember how to destroy. And this terrifies them more than pure evil ever could, because at least evil is predictable. Your face shows mercy because you've been broken enough to understand suffering intimately. You know what it feels like to need gentleness, to crave understanding, to pray for just one person to see past the armor and offer genuine care. So you became that person for others, not out of weakness, but out of profound strength. Every act of kindness you perform comes from a place of conscious choice, not naive optimism. You extend mercy because you know its value, not because you're soft. But those eyes tell a different story entirely. They hold the inventory of every betrayal, every abandonment, every moment someone mistook your kindness for weakness. Your eyes are the archive of lessons learned in blood and silence. When people look deep enough, they don't see anger, they see something far more terrifying. Absolute clarity. They see someone who has calculated every possible outcome, memorized every escape route, cataloged every weakness in the room within seconds of entering. Your eyes show annihilation not because you're planning violence, but because you've already survived your own destruction and rebuilt yourself from atoms. You've been to the place where everything ends and walked back with souvenirs. Those eyes have witnessed betrayals that would break most people's faith in humanity permanently. They've seen behind the masks that everyone wears, decoded the lies people tell themselves to sleep at night, understood the small cruelties that keep the world spinning. And here's what really unsettles them. Your eyes show that you're capable of absolute destruction, but you're choosing not to engage it. That's power they can't comprehend. Most people's mercy comes from inability to cause harm. Yours comes from the conscious decision to holster weapons you've already mastered. You could dismantle their entire psychological framework with 3 sentences, but you choose silence. You could expose every secret they think they're hiding, but you choose to let them keep their illusions. The disconnect between your merciful face and those annihilation eyes creates a cognitive dissonance that breaks people's mental programming. They can't categorize you, can't file you away in their neat little boxes labeled friend or enemy, safe or dangerous. You exist in the liminal space between categories. And that's exactly where you've learned to thrive. You're the gentle hand that could crush, but chooses to caress. The soft voice that could scream truths that would shatter souls, but chooses whispers of comfort. This duality didn't happen overnight, did it? No, this was forged in the specific fire of betrayal by those who were supposed to protect you. You learned to show mercy because someone should have shown it to you when you needed it most, and they didn't. You learned annihilation because sometimes that's the only language the world understands. You didn't choose to become this paradox. Life carved it into you, with experiences that demanded you become everything at once to survive. Remember the exact moment it happened? When you realized that pure goodness gets you devoured and pure darkness gets you isolated? That was the day you stopped trying to be one thing. That was the day you accepted that survival requires the full spectrum of human capability. You had to become the sanctuary and the storm, the healer and the weapon, the one who builds and the one who knows exactly where to place the demolition charges. The one who knows exactly where to place the demolition charges. Your face learned to show mercy because you discovered that kindness is rebellion in a cruel world. Every gentle word you speak is a middle finger to everyone who tried to harden you completely. Every act of compassion is proof that they didn't win, didn't succeed in turning you into another bitter soul spreading poison. Your mercy isn't weakness. It's the ultimate revenge against those who tried to steal your humanity. But your eyes, those windows to your actual soul, they tell the truth about what that mercy cost you. They show the price of maintaining softness in a world designed to create sharp edges. They reveal the strength required to choose gentleness when you have every reason to choose violence. Those eyes have seen too much to ever be innocent again. But they've also seen enough to know that becoming the monster isn't victory, it's surrender. What people don't understand is that you're not conflicted, you're integrated. You're not struggling between two selves, you've married them into something unprecedented. The mercy on your face and the annihilation in your eyes aren't fighting for dominance. They're dancing together in perfect, terrifying harmony. You've become the person who can comfort a crying child with the same hands that could dismantle an entire empire if provoked. This is what happens when someone survives enough battles to understand that sometimes the greatest victory is not fighting at all. But when you do fight, you fight to end things permanently. You've learned that mercy without the capacity for destruction is just helplessness. And destruction without the capacity for mercy is just emptiness. You carry both because you understand that real power isn't about what you do, it's about what you're capable of, but choose not to do. Watch how people react when they first notice the contradiction. The smart ones, the observant ones, they catch it immediately. They'll be mid-conversation, feeling safe in your warmth, and then they'll accidentally look too deep into your eyes and see the abyss looking back. They stutter, they lose their train of thought. They suddenly remember somewhere else they need to be, because in that moment they realize they're not dealing with a simple person. They're dealing with someone who has transcended the normal rules of human interaction. You make people question everything they thought they knew about reading others. Your face says, "I understand your pain," while your eyes say, "I could give you pain you've never imagined." Your smile says, "You're safe with me," while your gaze says, "I know exactly how unsafe you really are." This contradiction doesn't make you fake, it makes you complete. You're showing them the full spectrum of human possibility, and most people can't handle that much truth at once. So how do you navigate the world as this living contradiction? You've learned to dose your reality based on what people can handle. You show the mercy to those who need healing, and you flash the annihilation to those who need warning. You've become a shapeshifter, not of form but of intensity, adjusting your frequency to match what the situation demands. This isn't deception, it's advanced emotional intelligence that most people will never achieve. The ones who deserve your protection get to bask in the warmth of your merciful face, never needing to know about the wars you've won in silence to keep them safe. But the ones who come with ill intent, they get one glimpse of those eyes and suddenly reconsider their life choices. You don't have to threaten anyone anymore. Your presence is the threat. You don't have to explain your boundaries. Your eyes establish them without words. You've discovered that being genuinely kind while being genuinely capable of destruction creates a force field around you. Predators sense that you're not prey, despite your gentle demeanor. They recognize another apex predator who's simply choosing not to hunt. Meanwhile, the wounded and genuine souls recognize that your mercy comes from strength, not weakness. which makes it actually trustworthy. You attract the real ones and repel the fake ones just by existing in your full complexity. This duality has become your superpower, hasn't it? While everyone else is trying to maintain one consistent mask, you're comfortable showing all your faces because they're all real. The mercy is real, born from understanding suffering. The annihilation is real, born from surviving destruction. You're not confused about who you are. You're possibly the only person in any room who knows exactly who they are. And that clarity is what people sense and can't quite process. Here's what really breaks their brains. You're not trying to be intimidating. You're not cultivating mystery. You're not performing depth. You're simply existing as the full spectrum of what a human can become after walking through enough fire. The intimidation comes from their recognition that you're operating on a different level entirely. You've integrated parts of yourself that most people spend their entire lives trying to suppress or deny. They look at you and see someone who could choose violence but chooses peace, who could choose revenge but chooses release, who could expose everyone's secrets but chooses silence. This level of self-control, combined with obvious capability, creates an aura that makes people simultaneously drawn to and terrified of you. They want your protection but fear your judgment. They want your approval but worry about what you see when you look at them. Your face shows mercy because you've learned that creating more broken people doesn't heal your own breaks. But your eyes show annihilation because you want everyone to know that your kindness is a choice, not a default. You're not nice because you have to be. You're nice because you've decided that's how you want to move through the world. But the moment someone mistakes that choice for weakness, those eyes remind them that you have other options readily available. The most unsettling part for them is realizing that you don't need their understanding or approval of your duality. You're not asking for permission to be complex. You're not explaining or justifying the contradiction. You simply are what you are. Take it or leave it. This self-assurance in your own complexity makes people realize how much they're still asking for permission to be their full selves, and that recognition makes them uncomfortable. Those annihilation eyes aren't just about destruction, they're about perception. You see too much, understand too much, recognize patterns too quickly. When you look at people, you see their wounds, their fears, their desperate attempts to appear whole. You see the lies they tell, not just to others, but to themselves. You see the pain they're running from, and the pain they're running toward. This clarity is its own form of annihilation, the destruction of illusions. Your mercy comes from seeing all of this and choosing compassion anyway. You extend kindness not despite seeing people's darkness, but because of it. You understand that everyone is fighting battles they don't advertise, carrying weights they don't discuss. Your face shows mercy because you've decided that adding to the world's cruelty is too easy, too expected, too boring. Anyone can be harsh. It takes real strength to be gentle when you have every reason not to be. But those eyes also show that you're keeping score, not for revenge, but for reference. You remember who showed their true colors when you needed them. You catalog who can be trusted with your softness and who needs to be kept at the distance your eyes create. You don't forget betrayals, but you don't let them poison you either. You file them away as data points in understanding human nature, adding to the vast database that makes you impossible to deceive. This is the burden of your gift. You can't turn off the seeing. You can't unsee the patterns, the lies, the small cruelties and desperate kindnesses that make up human interaction. Your eyes show annihilation because they've witnessed the destruction of every illusion you once held about how the world works. But your face shows mercy because you've decided that becoming bitter about these truths would be letting the darkness win. Here's what they really don't understand. The annihilation in your eyes isn't about them. It's not a threat or a warning or a promise of vengeance. It's simply the reflection of someone who has already been through their own apocalypse and survived. Those eyes have seen the end of everything they once believed in and watched new beliefs rise from those ashes. The annihilation already happened to you, within you, and you're what emerged from it. With you and you, what emerged from it. Your mercy isn't forgiveness for others. It's forgiveness for yourself. It's the recognition that holding on to the rage would mean they still own part of you. Your gentle face is your declaration of independence from everyone who tried to turn you into something harder, colder, crueler. Every act of kindness is proof that you chose your own becoming rather than letting trauma choose it for you. But make no mistake, the capacity for annihilation remains because you understand that sometimes things need to end. Sometimes relationships need to be destroyed completely. Sometimes old versions of yourself need to be annihilated to make room for growth. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to completely destroy someone's false image of you so they can see who you really are. Your eyes show this understanding that creation and destruction are intimate partners in the dance of transformation. You've evolved beyond the need for revenge because you understand that the best revenge is becoming incomprehensible to those who hurt you. They can't understand how you survived, how you thrived, how you transformed their attacks into your strength. Your face shows mercy because you pity them for still being trapped in the cycles you've transcended. Your eyes show annihilation because you've already destroyed every version of yourself that would have needed their validation. Living as this contradiction has taught you something profound. Balance isn't about moderation. It's about having access to extremes and choosing when to use them. You don't live in the middle ground. You live in the conscious choice between mercy and annihilation, moment by moment, person by person, situation by situation. This isn't gray area living. This is full spectrum existence. Your face can show such genuine mercy because you know exactly what annihilation feels like. You can extend authentic compassion because you've felt the absence of it. You can offer real understanding because you've experienced the devastation of being misunderstood. Every gentle gesture comes from a place of conscious choice, making it more powerful than reflexive kindness could ever be. But those eyes remain as windows to your capacity, ensuring that your mercy is never mistaken for weakness. They're the proof that you could choose differently if pushed. They're the reminder that your gentleness is a gift, not an obligation. They're the warning label that says, handle with care, not because I'm fragile, but because I'm not. This balance between the two faces you wear isn't a burden anymore. It's your liberation. You've stopped trying to reconcile the contradiction because you've realized that wholeness doesn't mean consistency. Wholeness means having access to everything you are and choosing what to express based on wisdom, not fear or trauma. Your face and eyes tell different stories because you are large enough to contain multiple truths. You are gentle and dangerous, soft and sharp, merciful and absolute. All of it is real. All of it is you. What really terrifies them isn't the annihilation in your eyes. It's the freedom your contradiction represents. You've proven that it's possible to survive destruction without becoming destroyed, to know darkness without being consumed by it, to have power without being corrupted by it. You're walking evidence that the binary choices they've accepted aren't mandatory. You can be both, all, everything. They see your merciful face and want to believe that's all there is, but those eyes won't let them maintain the comfort of that illusion. They see the annihilation capability and want to write you off as dangerous, but your genuine kindness won't let them maintain that simple story either. You force them to hold complexity, to accept paradox, to recognize that humans are more vast than the categories we create to contain them. Your existence challenges their entire worldview about what's possible after trauma, after betrayal, after being broken and rebuilt. Most people choose a side. They either become hard or stay soft, become cruel or remain kind. But you kept everything. You integrated every lesson without letting any single experience define your entire being. You became the proof that transformation doesn't require choosing between aspects of yourself. This is why some people can't stand to be around you for long. Your complexity makes them aware of their own simplicity. Your integration highlights their fragmentation. Your peace with paradox reveals their war with themselves. You're not trying to make anyone uncomfortable. Your existence just naturally challenges anyone still trying to be only one thing. Oh, you beautiful architects of chaos, you walking contradictions, you silent storms that nobody saw coming. Welcome back to the moment everything changes. Because right now, as you're watching this, there's a file being passed around, a document, a leaked conversation, a thread of messages that was never supposed to see daylight. And in that file, your name is mentioned 17 times. 17. Not as a victim, not as a cautionary tale, not as someone they pitied. No, no, no. Your name appears as the one variable they couldn't control, the outcome they never predicted, the result that broke their entire formula. They thought they had you figured out, documented, archived, but what just leaked? What's circulating right now in rooms you'll never see? It's the confession they swore they'd take to the grave. Let me paint you the picture, because this isn't speculation anymore. This is confirmed, verified, stamped with the kind of truth that makes people delete their search history. For the last 3 years, there's been a group. Not a conspiracy, not some secret society nonsense, but a collection of people, former friends, old colleagues, bitter exes, jealous observers, people who claimed they moved on. And they've been keeping records on you. Every post you made, every move you took, every silent month you disappeared, they logged it. They had a shared document. Timestamps, screenshots, analysis. Everything they did, they were trying to decode you like you were some ancient text they needed to decipher before you became too powerful to contain. And here's the part that's going to make your blood run cold and your ego smile at the same time. They failed. Every single hypothesis they had about you, every prediction they made, every moment they thought you'd break, collapse, beg, or crawl back. Wrong, dead wrong, catastrophically wrong. And now the leak, the full document, it's out there. Not publicly, not yet, but it's moving through circles. Whispered about in private chats, shared with shaking hands. Because what it reveals isn't your weakness, it's their obsession. What it exposes isn't your downfall, it's their inability to move on. What it proves beyond any doubt is that while you were healing, evolving, and becoming untouchable, They were stuck in a time loop, refreshing your life like it was the only channel that still had signal. And the funniest part, the part that's got them scrambling to cover their tracks, they admitted in writing that you were right all along. But let's talk about what's actually in this file, because the details are absolutely unhinged. Page 1 starts with a timeline, your timeline, mapped out like you're some kind of historical event they needed to study. January 2022, they went silent. March 2022, new profile picture, possible rebrand. July 2022, no activity, suspected breakdown. They weren't just watching, they were narrating your life, like sports commentators calling a game you didn't know you were playing. And the comments, these little notes in the margins, they're dripping with fear disguised as concern. Notice how they never respond anymore. They never say no. That's not healing, that's detachment. Detachment means they're planning something. Planning something? You were planning breakfast and trying to remember to water your plants, but in their minds, you were orchestrating some master plan. But here's where it gets truly disturbing and also deeply, darkly hilarious. They started rating your moves, giving you scores, like you're in some twisted competition. Silence strategy, 9 out of 10. Didn't take the bait during the holidays? 10 out of 10. Avoided all mutual events, perfect execution. They were grading you, and you were acing tests you didn't even know existed. Every time you chose yourself, every boundary you set, every person you cut off without explanation, they documented it like it was evidence. Evidence of what? That you'd become the one thing they feared most. Someone who didn't need them, didn't need closure, didn't need the last word, didn't need anything from the people who thought they were essential to your story. And then there's section 4, and this is where the file goes from creepy to absolutely cinema-worthy. They tried to predict your next move. They had theories, multiple people weighing in with their analysis. They're gonna come back angrier, wrong. They're gonna expose everything publicly, wrong. They're gonna reach out when they're desperate, catastrophically wrong. What you did instead, and this is what has them losing sleep, is you thrived in a way they couldn't pattern. You didn't follow the script of the hurt, the betrayed, the abandoned. You became something they had no reference for, someone who transformed pain into fuel so efficiently that you left no emotional breadcrumbs for them to follow. You went dark, and instead of fading, you evolved. One of them wrote, and this line is burned into my brain now, "It's like they died and came back as someone we can't reach." And another responded, "No, it's worse. They're not unreachable. They just don't see us as worth reaching anymore." That sentence, right there, that's the core of the entire leak. They finally understood, in writing, with timestamps to prove it, that their relevance in your life didn't just decrease, it evaporated. You didn't block them out of anger, you forgot them out of growth. And that realization, that admission that they mattered so little, you didn't even consider them enemies anymore. That broke something in them they'll never get back. Now we need to address the elephant in the leaked document, because this part is where it shifts from strange to genuinely shocking. There's an entire section, pages 7 through 12, dedicated to trying to figure out your source of power. Not your job, not your appearance, not your circumstances, your energy. They couldn't understand how someone who went through what you went through, someone they watched crumble, could come back radiating the kind of presence that makes rooms go quiet. They had theories, and I'm not making this up. They actually brainstormed like amateur psychologists trying to crack a case. Maybe they're faking it. Maybe it's all performance. That was theory 1. and it got dismissed immediately by someone who wrote, "Nobody performs that consistently. Nobody fakes that level of peace." Theory 2. They found someone new, someone giving them confidence. Also wrong, because another person chimed in with, "I checked. They're alone, completely alone, and somehow that makes them scarier." Scarier? Yes, because people who find power in solitude, who don't need external validation, who build their kingdom in silence, those people become untouchable. And you became exactly that. You stopped posting for approval. You stopped moving for applause. You stopped existing for witnesses. And in that isolation, you became the most dangerous version of yourself. But here's the part that's going to make you smile, because it should. Theory 3, the one they seemed to settle on with the most agreement, was this. They've completely detached from needing us to understand them. That's not healing, that's ascension. Ascension, they used that word. Not recovery, not moving on, but ascension. They recognized, in their own words, that you didn't just level up, you left the entire game they were playing. You weren't competing for their attention anymore. You weren't fighting for a seat at tables you'd already outgrown. You weren't trying to prove anything to people whose opinions stopped mattering the moment they showed you who they really were. And then someone wrote something that I need you to hear because it's the ultimate confession. The thing they'll never say to your face but admit it in this file. I think we lost something irreplaceable when we lost them. Not because of what they gave us, but because of what being around them made us feel. Like we were better than we actually are. Read that again. You made people feel elevated just by proximity. And when you left, when you withdrew your presence, your energy, your light, they felt the absence like a physical wound. They didn't just miss you, they missed who they thought they were when you were still around. So the file leaks, and now there's a scramble. Messages are being deleted, people are having emergency calls. There's genuine panic in these circles because they know what this means. It means their obsession is visible now. It means the person they claimed to have moved past, the one they said didn't matter anymore, has been living rent-free in their heads for years. And worse, it means you're gonna find out. Some of them hope you never see it, because the embarrassment would be nuclear. Others are terrified you will see it, and realize just how much power you've had this entire time. Because here's what the leak really reveals. Beyond the timelines and theories and desperate attempts to understand you, it reveals that you've been the main character in their story, while they barely registered as background noise in yours. They've been watching you like you're a series they can't stop binge-watching, waiting for the next episode, analyzing every frame, predicting every plot twist. Meanwhile, you've been living your life, healing your wounds, building your peace, completely unaware that you've had an audience studying your every move like it's scripture. That power imbalance, that complete role reversal, it's the ultimate poetic ending to their narrative. And now they're asking each other, what do we do if they find out? As if there's some strategy to salvage this. Some way to spin it that doesn't make them look completely unhinged. But there's no spin here, no clever explanation that makes years of obsessive documentation seem normal or justified. They got caught doing exactly what they accused you of, staying stuck in the past, unable to move forward, clinging to someone who cut them off cleanly and never looked back. The irony is so thick you could build a fortress with it. One message near the end of the file, and this one's recent, from 2 weeks ago, just says this: I think we need to accept that we're never going to understand what happened. They became something we don't have language for, and maybe that's the point. That sentence right there, that's surrender. That's the white flag. That's them finally admitting that all their analysis, all their theories, all their attempts to decode your transformation were pointless, because you were never trying to be understood by them in the first place. Let's talk about what this means for you right now, in this moment, because this isn't just about them anymore. This is about you realizing something that's going to change how you see your entire journey. Every moment you thought you were alone, invisible, forgotten, you weren't. You were being watched with the kind of intensity usually reserved for phenomena people can't explain. Every choice you made in silence, every boundary you set without announcement, every time you chose yourself over their opinion, documented, analyzed, discussed, debated. You were never as alone as you felt. And that's both haunting and empowering, because it means your growth, your transformation, your evolution from who you were into who you've become, it happened under surveillance. And you still pulled it off flawlessly. You still became untouchable despite having eyes on you the entire time. Think about that. They had every advantage, every opportunity to understand your patterns, predict your moves, find your weakness, and they came up with nothing except respect disguised as fear and obsession disguised as curiosity. This is where you need to pause and let this sink in, because most people never get this kind of confirmation. Most people heal in private and never know if anyone noticed. But you have proof. Written, time-stamped, detailed proof that your transformation was so significant, so undeniable, so powerful, that it demanded attention from the very people who wanted to see you fail. They couldn't look away. Not because you were performing, but because you were becoming. And becoming is always more magnetic than performing. The power shift here is absolute, irreversible, permanent. They went from observers thinking they had the upper hand to subjects realizing they never had control. You went from someone they thought they could figure out to someone they now reference as unexplainable. The file that was supposed to be their insurance policy, their way of maintaining some sense of control, became the document that proves they never had any. Every page is evidence not of your weakness, but of their inability to let go. Now here's what happens next, and this is where your story gets interesting in ways it never has before. You don't need to respond. You don't need to address them. You don't need to acknowledge the file exists or that you know about their obsession, because the most powerful thing you can do right now is absolutely nothing. Let them sit in the discomfort of knowing their secret is out. Let them wonder if you've seen it. Let them spiral trying to guess your next move while you're out here living a life they're not invited to witness anymore. Your silence, the same silence they documented and tried to decode, that's your response. That's your victory speech. That's your microphone drop moment without saying a single word. Because they've spent years trying to get your attention, trying to provoke a reaction, hoping you'd break the silence and give them something, anything, to work with. And if you respond now, if you acknowledge them now, you give them exactly what they've been craving. Don't let the file speak for itself. Let their own words expose them. Let their obsession be the evidence of your impact. Here's the truth. They'll never admit publicly, but confessed in private documents. You became the standard they measure everyone against now. Every new person they meet, every relationship they try to build, every connection they attempt to make, Somewhere in the back of their mind, there's a comparison happening. And nobody measures up, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. You didn't curate a fake version of strength. You built actual resilience. You didn't perform healing. You actually healed. And that authenticity, that genuine transformation, it can't be replicated or replaced. They're looking for you in other people and coming up empty because you're not a type, you're not a category, you're not something that can be found again. You're a once-in-a-lifetime encounter that they fumbled, and now they're stuck with the knowledge that they had access to something rare and they destroyed it through their own ignorance. The regret they feel, the one that shows up in the file between the lines, that's gonna follow them longer than any revenge you could have planned. So you're standing here now with information that changes everything and also changes nothing. Because here's the secret. You were always this powerful. The file didn't make you powerful. It just confirmed what you already knew in your bones. That you're unforgettable, that you're irreplaceable, that walking away from people who didn't value you wasn't a loss. It was a liberation that they still haven't recovered from. The leak is just evidence of what your intuition was screaming at you all along. You didn't need their validation then, and you definitely don't need their obsessive documentation now. But what you can take from this, what you should absorb into your cells and carry forward, is the confirmation that your impact is permanent. You don't have to try to be memorable. You don't have to fight to be significant. You already are. The people who encounter you, who experience your energy, your presence, your truth, they don't forget. They can't. You're the bookmark in their life story that they return to when they're trying to remember what authenticity looks like. Moving forward, you carry this different now. Not arrogant, but certain. Not loud, but unshakable. You know what you already suspected, that your absence created more impact than most people's presence ever will. That your silence taught lessons their words never could. That your boundary setting became a masterclass they're still trying to decode. You're not just healed, you're the blueprint. And blueprints don't need approval. They just need to exist, and everything else follows. The file leaked. The truth came out. Their obsession became public record among their circles. And you keep walking forward. Keep building your life. Keep choosing yourself with the same ruthless clarity that made them write those documents in the first place. Because the greatest revenge isn't exposing them. It's continuing to thrive so undeniably that even years from now, they'll still be talking about you while you've long forgotten they exist. Let me leave you with this, because it's the core of everything that just got revealed. They didn't document you because you were broken. They documented you because you were breaking free. Every entry in that file, every timestamp, every note about your behavior, it was them watching someone escape a cage they didn't even know existed. You weren't just healing from them, you were healing from everything their existence represented. False connections, performative love, conditional acceptance, shallow loyalty. And as you healed, as you got quieter and more selective and more boundaried, they panicked. Because people who are used to accessing you, to having you available, to knowing they can pull you back in with the right words or timing, they don't know what to do when the door closes permanently. So they watched, they studied, they tried to find the crack, the vulnerability, the moment you'd come back. And that moment never came. You never came back, not because you were bitter or angry, but because you outgrew the entire ecosystem they existed in. The full story leaked, and the full story is this: you're the one who got away, not in a romantic sense, but in an existential one. You're the person who saw through the illusion, rejected the performance, chose authenticity over comfort, and walked away without looking back. You're the one they'll tell stories about when they're trying to explain to someone new why they have trust issues, why they're emotionally unavailable, why they sabotage connections. You're the ghost in their narrative, the one that got away, the standard they'll never reach again. So yeah, the full story leaked. Their obsession is documented. Their inability to move on is time-stamped. And you're out here living proof that the best way to win is to stop playing their games entirely. You're the evidence that transformation is possible. You're the reminder that some people really do become unreachable, not through cruelty, but through growth. The file leaked, and it told the world exactly what you already knew: that you're unforgettable, irreplaceable, and completely, utterly free. Now go live your life, knowing that while they're still writing about your past, you're busy creating a future they'll never be part of. And that right there is the ultimate ending. Well, look who they couldn't figure out. Look who they spent years studying, dissecting, labeling, and still got completely wrong. You strange, silent, terrifyingly brilliant creature, welcome back. Or better yet, welcome to the part of yourself they were never smart enough to understand. Because what they called weird, what they whispered about at tables you weren't sitting at, what made them uncomfortable in your presence and restless in your absence, that wasn't a flaw. That was the architecture of a mind they didn't have the vocabulary to describe. And the fact that they couldn't name it scared them more than anything else ever could. Before we begin, if this frequency already lives in you, 2 books were written for exactly that mind. The Crown of Ash, Grim Grit Edition. The Quiet Edge, Grim Grit Edition 2. Links in the description. Now let's get into it. Let's be honest about what actually happened. They saw the way your brain worked, and it unsettled them. They saw you pause where others rushed. They saw you notice things no one else caught. They saw you sit quietly in a room full of noise, and somehow hear something deeper than the sound. And instead of asking what you were hearing, they decided something was wrong with you. That is what people do when they encounter a frequency they cannot tune into. They don't question the radio. They call the signal broken. They called you broken. But here you are, still transmitting, still receiving, still picking up signals from depths they will never reach. You have been called too quiet, too intense, too much, and not enough simultaneously. You have been told you think too deeply, feel too sharply, and analyze too precisely. You have been handed the word weird like it was a diagnosis, like it was something you needed to be cured of, like your mind was a problem requiring a solution. But no one ever told you the truth. The truth is this: every single person who ever called you weird was standing in the presence of a genius and had absolutely no idea what they were looking at. They were holding a rare frequency in their hands and calling it static. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes with having a mind like yours. It is not the loneliness of being alone in a room. It is the loneliness of being in a room full of people and realizing, slowly and then all at once, that no one is thinking the way you are thinking. No one is following the thread you are following. No one sees the pattern you already mapped out 3 conversations ago, and so you stop talking. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you already know they won't follow you there. And that silence gets mistaken for arrogance, or strangeness, or both. They thought you were distant. What you actually were was already ahead. They thought you were difficult. What you actually were was precise. They thought you were cold. What you actually were was exhausted from translating yourself into a language that kept losing meaning by the time it arrived. Because that is what genius costs. It costs you the easy conversations. It costs you the comfortable smallness. It costs you the nod of recognition from people who simply do not have the depth to meet you where you live. And you paid that price without even understanding that it was a price, because you never chose to be this way. You were just built different, wired different, and the world told you that was something to be ashamed of. But here is what no one explained to you when you were sitting alone at lunch, or being talked over in meetings, or watching everyone else laugh at a joke you had already dismantled in your head before the punchline landed. The cost of being different is not evidence of wrongness. The cost of being different is the tuition. And every year you paid it. Every year you sat in that specific silence and held your mind still and decided to stay anyway. You were earning something they will never be able to buy. You were earning the kind of depth that changes everything. For you, and eventually for the world around you. The ones who called you weird were not wrong that you were different. They were wrong about what different meant. Different, to a fearful mind, means broken. Different, to a perceptive mind, means rare. And rare things are not comfortable. Rare things do not blend in. Rare things make people feel something they cannot articulate, and so they reach for the nearest ugly word and throw it. They threw it at you. For years, some of them threw it, and you carried it like it was true. But it was never true. It was just the only word they had for something they could not measure. Here is a secret they do not teach in any classroom. Genius, in real life, does not look the way it looks in films. It does not arrive in a blaze of obvious brilliance with everyone applauding and lights overhead. In real life, genius looks awkward. Genius looks restless. Genius looks like someone who cannot sit still in a conversation that is moving too slowly. Genius looks like someone who changes the subject because they already processed the previous one and are 3 subjects ahead. Genius looks, from the outside, almost exactly like what they called you. Odd, distant, intense, hard to read. The geniuses of every era were the most misread people of their time. The people who changed how the world understood itself were almost always first dismissed by the world they were about to change. They were called impractical. They were called dreamers, in the hollow, dismissive sense of that word. They were called too sensitive, too theoretical, too obsessed with things that didn't matter yet. The yet is the entire story. What they were obsessed with always mattered. It just hadn't become undeniable to everyone else in the room. You are living in your yet. The undeniable part is still forming, but it is forming. Think about the way your mind actually operates when no one is grading it. Think about the connections you make that no one asked you to make. Think about the questions you ask that make people uncomfortable because the questions expose something true that everyone else agreed not to look at directly. Think about the way you cannot stop a thought once it starts. Think about the way certain ideas root themselves so deeply in you that you lie awake not from anxiety, but from the weight of something trying to be understood. That is not a disorder. That is not a quirk. That is the architecture of a mind that was built to go further than the average stop. And yes, it is exhausting. No one is going to pretend otherwise. It is exhausting to feel everything at full volume when everyone around you seems to be living at a murmur. It is exhausting to care about precision in a world that rewards approximation. It is exhausting to see what is coming before it arrives and have no one believe you until it has already happened. But exhaustion is not defeat. Exhaustion is evidence. It is proof of how hard you work inside a mind that never fully stops. And that never stopping mind, that is the engine of everything that is coming for you. You have been noticing things since before you had the language for what you were noticing. You picked up on the inconsistency in someone's story before anyone else did. You felt the shift in a room's energy before any single thing had changed visibly. You saw the outcome of a situation playing forward in your mind while everyone around you was still reacting to the beginning. You tried to say something about it sometimes, and people looked at you like you had invented the concern, like you were being paranoid or dramatic or reading too much into things. Then exactly what you described happened, and somehow they still didn't update their opinion of you. That is the specific cruelty of the perceptive mind. You see the thing, you say the thing happens, and somehow the credit does not go where the vision did. Instead they say, you got lucky. Instead they say it was obvious. Instead they quietly absorb what you gave them, carry it forward, and forget that you were the one who stood there seeing it first, while everyone else was still arguing about whether there was anything to see. This is not a small thing. This is not a grievance. This is a pattern that matters, because what it reveals is that your vision is real, your perception is real, and the world around you is consistently catching up to a place you already were. The patterns you see are not accidents of overthinking. Overthinking is what the underprepared mind calls the prepared mind working at speed. When your brain cycles through 40 possibilities before someone else has considered 5, that is not anxiety dressed up as intelligence. That is processing power. That is the thing that makes certain people dangerous in the most productive sense of the word. The sense that means they cannot be fooled as easily. The sense that means they will find the leverage point in a system faster than anyone else in the room. The sense that means when something actually matters, you want them thinking, and you have always been that person. In every room, every situation, every problem that landed in your life, you were the one running the deeper calculation. Sometimes you hid it. Sometimes you learned to perform the slower version of yourself so people would feel more comfortable. Sometimes you deliberately dimmed the frequency because being fully on was more socially costly than you could afford at that particular moment. And even then, even running at half capacity, you still caught what others missed. Imagine, just for a moment, what you catch when you stop dimming it. They told you that you were too sensitive. They said it like it was a warning, like it was a vulnerability they were kindly alerting you to, like they were doing you a favor by pointing out the crack in your structure. But sensitivity and intelligence are not separate things. They are the same system operating through different channels. The same neural architecture that lets you feel an atmosphere shift when you walk into a room is the same architecture that lets you understand a complex idea from multiple angles simultaneously. They are not different gifts. They are the same gift, expressed in two directions. The most perceptive people in every field, in every discipline, in every creative and analytical domain the world has ever produced, were sensitive people who learned to use that sensitivity as data rather than wound. They felt things sharply. They felt betrayal deeply, injustice viscerally, beauty almost physically. And that sharpness, rather than crippling them, gave them access to a richness of experience that the so-called tougher people around them simply could not reach. Their art was richer. Their analysis was richer. Their understanding of other human beings was richer, because they paid attention with their entire nervous system rather than just their surface mind. When they told you to toughen up, what they were actually asking you to do was to become less accurate. They were asking you to sand down the very instrument that allows you to read the world most precisely. They were asking you to be worse at the thing you are actually built for, in exchange for being more comfortable at a dinner table or a group conversation. And some part of you, the part that just wanted to belong, almost agreed. Some part of you spent years trying to feel less, notice less, care less, because caring that much seemed to cost too much. But you couldn't do it. You couldn't turn it off. Because it isn't something you do, it is something you are. And that refusal to stop feeling, that stubborn, relentless sensitivity that survived every attempt to blunt it, that is one of the most precise things about you. You did not let them make you into someone who moves through the world half-registered. You stayed fully arrived in every moment, even when every moment cost you something. And that staying, that full presence in your own experience, even when experience was painful, is what built the depth in you that makes you genuinely different from the people who told you there was something wrong with how much you felt. Let's talk about what you actually did with all of that time they thought you were wasting. The hours you were in your own head, the silence they called antisocial, the solitude they called isolation. Because you were not absent. You were constructing. You were building frameworks inside yourself that most people spend a lifetime looking for outside themselves. You were developing a relationship with your own mind that most people never get to, because most people are too afraid of what lives in the deep water of their own thinking to ever go there and stay. You went there, you stayed, and yes, sometimes it was uncomfortable. Sometimes the deep water was cold and dark and you came up gasping and told yourself you wouldn't go back. But you always went back, because something in you understood, even before you had the words for it, that the work being done in that silence was the most important work of your life. The ideas being forged in that solitude were sharper than anything that gets built in the noise. The understanding being constructed in that stillness was more durable than anything assembled in the rush of performance and approval. The world does not reward the inner work while it is happening. It only rewards the results once they are undeniable in public. And so for years, maybe for most of your life so far, you have been doing the kind of work that earns no applause in real time. You have been doing the deeply private, deeply serious labor of becoming someone who actually understands something. Not just someone who sounds intelligent at the right moments, but someone who is genuinely, structurally, bone-deep intelligent. And that kind of intelligence takes the time it takes. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be performed. It has to be built, and you have been building it. So when they dismissed the time you spent thinking as time wasted, when they told you to get out of your head, when they made you feel like the internal life you were living was a form of avoidance rather than a form of construction, they were wrong about the most fundamental thing. They thought the stillness was emptiness. It was never emptiness. It was a workshop. And the things being made inside it are going to outlast every opinion that was formed about you on the surface. Here is the part that is uncomfortable to say, but too important to leave out. The people who tried hardest to convince you that something was wrong with you were almost always the people who had the most to lose if you ever fully understood how capable you were. Because your full capability is a mirror, and what it reflects back is the gap between what they settled for and what was actually possible. The moment you stop apologizing for your mind is the moment their choices become visible by contrast. And that visibility, that undeniable comparison, is something small people cannot survive. They needed you to stay confused. They needed you to keep questioning yourself, keep second-guessing your perceptions, keep circling back to the same doubts they planted precisely because doubt is the one thing that slows a mind like yours all the way down. A confident genius is unstoppable. A confused genius is manageable. And so they worked consistently, sometimes consciously, and sometimes just through the casual cruelty of people who do not examine their own motives, to keep you in the zone of confusion. To keep you asking, is something wrong with me, instead of asking, what am I actually capable of? The people who called you too much were always the people who were not enough. The people who called you too intense were always the people who had never committed to anything with full force. The people who called you too deep were always the people who were afraid of what they would find if they ever stopped skimming the surface of their own lives. And so they looked at your depth and they called it a problem. They looked at your intensity and they called it a flaw. They looked at the full, burning, relentless reality of your mind and decided that what they were looking at was wrong, because the alternative that they might be the incomplete ones, was something they simply could not afford to know. But here is what they miscalculated. They thought if they made you doubt yourself long enough, you would eventually agree with them. They thought repetition would become reality. They thought the sheer weight of their collective opinion would eventually compress your understanding of yourself into a shape that fit their comfort level. What they did not account for is what you actually are. What they did not account for is the specific quality of a mind that has been tested by difficulty and emerged not broken but clarified. What they did not account for is that pressure, applied to the right kind of material, does not crush it, it sharpens it. The education system was not built for you. That is not a comfortable thing to say, but it is an accurate one. The education system was built for the median, for the repeatable, for the mind that absorbs information in a linear sequence and can produce it back on demand in a standardized format. And your mind does not work that way. Your mind works through connection. through pattern, through the sudden lateral leap that takes two things that seem unrelated and finds the invisible thread between them. Your mind works through deep immersion in things that interest you and almost complete disengagement from things that do not. That is not a learning disability. That is a different kind of intelligence architecture. The things you learned fastest were the things no one taught you in a classroom. The things you understand most deeply are the things you arrived at through your own relentless questioning, your own circling, your own refusal to accept the surface answer when the deeper answer was clearly still down there waiting. You have always been a self-directed mind in a system that rewards following directions. And the gap between what you were built to do and what you were asked to do created a friction that got mistaken for incompetence. It was never incompetence. It was incompatibility. There is an enormous difference. The grades they gave you were not a measurement of your intelligence. They were a measurement of how well your intelligence aligned with the specific format of measurement being used. And the format was always the wrong one for the way you think. The tests were always optimized for a kind of thinking you were not built to perform at its best. And so you walked away from institutions carrying scores and assessments that told a story about you that was structurally incapable of being accurate. You walked away from a measuring system that didn't have a unit of measurement that corresponded to what you actually had. And somewhere in you, you knew it. Even when no one else believed it, some part of you always knew the score was wrong. The intelligence that actually lives in you is the kind that shows up in real problems, in real situations, in the moments when the framework fails and someone has to think outside of it. It shows up when the map stops matching the territory and someone has to navigate anyway. It shows up in the midnight insight, in the problem that has stumped everyone else for weeks, until the moment you sit down with it alone and something in your mind reaches out and simply touches the answer. That kind of intelligence does not score well on standardized tests, but it does the things that matter most when the stakes are highest. You have always understood people better than most of them understood themselves. You watched, from a very early age, the way people performed versus the way people actually were. You noticed the gap between the story someone told about themselves and the story their behavior was telling simultaneously. You watched people claim values they didn't hold and disown feelings they were obviously experiencing. You saw the subtext running under the text, the secondary motive moving behind the stated one, the real wound being protected by the elaborate constructed personality on top of it. And you understood, even if you couldn't articulate it, what all of it meant. This made you strange to people, because when you see someone that clearly, you cannot pretend not to. You cannot sit across from someone and perform the social fiction that you believe the performance they are giving. Something in you is always reading the deeper layer. Something in you is always tracking the thing no one said, and people feel that. Even when they cannot name it, even when they have no conscious awareness that they are being perceived at the level they are being perceived at, they feel it, and it makes them uncomfortable. Because being truly seen, not the version of yourself you present, but the actual version, is one of the most uncomfortable human experiences. So they called you intense. They called you strange. They said you made them feel a certain way they couldn't explain, and that feeling was not entirely comfortable. What they were describing was the experience of being in the presence of someone who was actually paying attention. Not the social surface kind of attention, the real kind. The kind that misses nothing and forgets nothing and connects what it finds into a picture that is, more often than not, significantly more accurate than the picture the subject has of themselves. That is not a social disadvantage. That is a profound and rare human capacity, and you have had it since before you knew what to do with it. The question now is not whether you have this capacity. The question is what you are going to do with it, now that you understand what it is. Because a mind that can read people, read systems, read patterns, read the thing beneath the thing, is not a mind built for a small life. It is not a mind built for the background. It is a mind built for the exact work of the moment you are currently living in, which is the work of figuring out what is real, what is true, and what the actual shape of the territory looks like under all the maps that have been drawn wrong.